All right, I am on with Matt Brook. Matt, thanks for doing this with me. Um, Tell us a little bit about where you are in your author journey right now.
Basically, I've just been dabbling here and there, write down story ideas. And at one time, I did write a couple of short stories, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
And I just kept trying to edit them and make them better, and they never did anything. So I'm still relatively new in that aspect, but I've read a lot. I've watched a lot of videos. I try to do stuff, but it doesn't click in my head for some reason.
Okay, that's fair. Um, my goal today from hearing your email is to help you get writing, to help you get started. What are you hoping to walk away from today?
Well, as I said in my email, I get this idea, and then, from reading and research, it's like, okay, I need to have an idea. I
Hmm.
need to turn the idea into a concept,
Yeah.
and then I need to turn the concept into a premise. But then my ADHD brain starts going all over the place. Well, we need this and that, the other. It needs to have a message, this, that, and the other, and it just explodes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, what was the idea? Does it still match the premise I'm trying to create to get to the final synopsis to create plot? You know what I'm saying? It's just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it goes all over the place because then when I start working with it, parts of it change, and I'm like, is there some kind of guideline? Go back here, look at it. Is it still correct? And then move forward or no?
Okay. Are you when you're sitting down to write and your brain's kind of going in all directions? Are you looking at a blank page, or do you feel like you've got something to start with? Like, describe that moment to me a little bit more.
Um, well, this recent idea that I had, I mentioned in my email that I was using Peter Chawowski's story engine deck and his deck of worlds.
Yeah.
And I was going through the process of creating the Clash of Wheels prompt. And yeah, it was just, my mind was going all over the place making a story. My mind tries to make everything fit.
Okay.
And I think that's where my problem is, because there's way too much going on in my head trying to make everything fit together into a cohesive story.
Okay.
But I just start thinking, I just start writing down notes.
Okay. So nice. That helps me. The reason I'm asking, Matt, is because everybody functions as a writer a little bit differently. And none of us really write the same. So when we're like trying to figure out how to get you writing, part of what I don't just want to apply a system to you that and say like, well, here's a blanket system that works for everybody, because it's not true. There's not something that works for everybody. So we need to figure out a system that's going to be specific for you. What I'm hearing is that um you have a desire, like when you sit down to tell a story, you've used the phrase, I want to get it right, several times. So there's a desire in you to kind of like accomplish something that you can walk away from and be like, okay, I did that thing.
Yes.
And you have a lot of ideas all at once.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's look real quick at what you sent me.
Okay.
Um, what you sent me is a really, just to encourage you, what you sent me is a really great start to a story. Um, it is you're never gonna get it right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So you've got working title's great, The Wall That Breathes. You've got a really nice history behind it, and you've done a lot of background work, which for fantasy sci-fi is really, really important. Um, and I can tell that you're thinking through the big stuff, like the different tenets of the world. And then you come down into your kind of main character storyline. Once upon a time, there's a guy named Radix.
Right.
And you work through kind of what Radix is going to do, and you have these really nice plot beats as to what's going to happen with Radix. They're big plot beats, but they're really nice plot beats. And then you've even gone so far as to give me like side characters, and which is great. And then you've got your message and your theme here. Which part of this, as somebody who wants to get it right, which part of all of this do you feel most confident about?
None of it really.
Okay.
I mean, and the other thing is, I don't even know if you saw in the email my question about the genre.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if I have that kind of, nailed down as what it's going to be, there wouldn't be so many question marks in the concept notes. And, and then also making it, since, it's in a desert setting, a science fiction,
Hmm.
probably on a different planet, that leads into the name, because all the names are really placeholders. The only name that I'm confident with is Radix. I don't
Okay.
know about the other names, if they're going to stay the same or if they're going to change. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, most of the stuff that I tried to write before was always realistic, maybe futuristic. I attempted dystopia and post-apocalyptic stuff like that, but I've never really written science fiction before, and I don't know if that's why some of it is being hesitant in my brain to come into focus.
Okay. So, everything you're feeling right now is normal, just to affirm you. The insecurity in your plans, the like, I kind of like it, I don't kind of like it, the like, I'm not sure why I'm writing this, just to affirm what you're feeling, that is all very normal, right? So, every writer feels that. We all feel it. I haven't met a writer yet who has a plan and then sits, and I've worked with over 200 over the last 3 years. I've never met one that says I have a plan and I am 100% confident in the success of this book. I've never met one. Um, Successful, just starting out. If you're like me, toiling in the trenches forever, like I haven't met one of us that's like, I own this story and I know exactly what I'm doing. We're all kind of like, this is what came out of me, and I'm not sure if I can make all the pieces fit. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes, it does.
So, and to encourage you, and now to say, with with your book, um sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Think about how,
Happens all the time to me.
yeah, my mind started running on like, yeah, the book I'm working on right now I don't really like either. Let me ask you, before we get into kind of like what you need to do, what your next step is, let's talk about your dream for this book. First off, are you do you see yourself writing multiple books, or do you see yourself writing one book and being satisfied and walking away?
I would be happy to be done with one, but I would like to make more.
Okay.
And in the email I said, I was looking for a short story idea, to practice writing scenes and stuff, but then it's exploded
Hmm.
into everything you have here. And then on one of the other writing prompts I did with the cards, there's a whole nother setting. And I was thinking, well, maybe because of the vineyard portion, it ties back. You know what I'm saying? So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's very possible to be bigger.
Yeah. So I was just curious. Some writers I work with are like, no, this is the only book I want to spend the next 10 years writing this book, and then I want to be done. So that's why I was asking that question, because it's going to determine what we talk about next. Um, are If I could give you a dream scenario, if I could say, Matt, when you finish this book, your dream is going to happen. On one side, the dream is, um, you know, 100 people read your book, and they tell you this is like nothing I've ever read before, and I absolutely love it. Or 1 million people read your book, they read it, and then they just move on to the next one. They enjoy it, but they don't really think about it after they read it. Which side of the dream scenario would you be on?
Well, I would like to write stories that do make people think. I mean, if you read the message, I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen,
Hmm.
you know, and sometimes we just need to slow down and think about other people's perspectives sometimes to
Yeah.
understand what they're going through to make us all better.
Okay. So I would worry less about genre, and I just write your story.
Okay.
So I want you to put aside, like, is this fantasy? Is this science fiction? What is this? The reason I ask that question is if you're looking to sell a ton and move on to the next book, so the like, I want 1 million people to read it and I don't care if they think it's the greatest book ever, then we need to be worried about genre conventions. We need to put you into a plot structure, and we need to be like, okay, this is the first scene you write based on the plot structure, because you're writing to the market, and writing to the market means you look like everything else that's selling. You're probably going to be forgotten after people read it, but you'll sell. You have the potential to sell more. I can't promise you'll sell anything, but
Right.
you have the potential to sell more. That other side is the more uh unique, individualistic side, where you're like, yeah, I've got some genre ideas. I'm kind of crossing genres. I'm putting these genres together, and I don't know, it's going to make it less adaptable directly to the market, but it's going to make it uniquely your story. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So because we're going to go that way, we're going to approach your writing a little bit differently. I'm not going to worry about genre conventions, and I'm not going to force you into a plot structure. We're going to approach it differently. So
Okay.
you have all these big you have all these big the history of things, and in the history of things there is these notes about how the city works, how the wall works, and like the different aspects of the world. What gets you, and I hope you can feel like I'm narrowing down. I promise we're going somewhere. I'm not just asking you random questions. We're narrowing down to make it something that you can do. What gets you more excited? The history of stuff, or the like present day mechanics of how the world works?
Well, it all excites me, you know.
Okay.
What really excited me was going through and actually creating this story in this world just based off of the prompts that I was getting. But I know we need, you know, the message. It's current, it's now, you know, so probably the current present issues being faced by Radix, probably.
Okay. So it's really the theme that gets you pumped. Like these messages at the end that you've kind of titled like message and theme. This is like, yeah, this is the core of the story.
Right.
Was okay. That's great. That's really helpful. Because what I'm doing is I want to write, I want to get you writing in a way that excites you and keeps you passionate, because as when a writer like you who wants to get it right, you're going to get frustrated with your scenes because you're going to write them and they're not going to be what you want them to be. So,
Okay.
and I'm just warning you, that is the doom of all of us who have a little bit of a perfectionist streak in ourselves. You write things and you're not going to be happy with it. So let's just go ahead and put that out there, that like you're going to write these scenes multiple times.
Okay.
Because you're not going to like them. And even after you've written them 3 or 4 times, you're still not going to like them, but you're just going to move on to the next one. Uh, so we've got this message and theme. Wisdom lies in embracing the unfamiliar, and through understanding it becomes enlightenment. And you've got plot beats for Radix. What I want you to do is you've got the big. You've got the story idea, you've got the world defined, you've got the setting defined, you have Radix's large journey defined, right?
Right.
There's and I'm just going to go through, I'll send this to you when we're done, but I'm just going to go through and highlight some phrases for you that I think really define his journey. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, so this right here is one potential scene. After Radix becomes intrigued with some schoolyard magic tricks that Everett could perform, Everett told Radix that he had telekinesis, but don't tell anyone else. This is another potential scene here. His parents told him to keep it secret so he wouldn't bring too much attention to himself. So we've got 2 scenes here. Potentially you can watch Everett's parents tell him that. Potentially we have Radix becoming intrigued with schoolyard tricks. You might even have 3 scenes here Or you might break this. I'd actually probably break the scenes this way. Sorry, now that I think about it. Radix becoming intrigued by schoolyard's magic tricks, and then Everett and Radix having a conversation about telekinesis and why Everett's keeping it secret, right? So you've got 2 scenes to write here already. And I can go through this whole like Radix world and talk about that, right? I can go through the whole show, the whole world, and show you the scenes here that we've got to go. Toward the end of school, Radix and Everett have a discussion about Everett's telekinesis, but ultimately, Everett said he didn't like to use the powers because he felt like it was cheating rather than doing his day's work. Here's another scene, right? After they join the workforce, they keep in touch, but their get-togethers become more sporadic. We can have another scene here.
Okay.
In the future, them getting together, but it's becoming more sporadic, right? Everett starts working with the Oasis conservative and learns to harvest berries. We have a scene of Everett learning to work, right? After working for 10 years, he moved into a position of helping the warehouse distribution. We have a scene of him getting promoted. Do you kind of get a feel for what I'm doing here?
Yes.
I'm just going through and I'm grabbing sentences where I'm like, that is a moment in this person's life. So when you think about story is like long or short, but story is a grab of somebody's timeline, right? Unless you're Michener writing like generations at a time. And even Michener, you almost never get like somebody's whole lifespan. You get like, okay, from here to here, I'm going to tell this portion of the story because I've got a theme that I want to pop in this portion of the story. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're narrowing down on their life. And then to tell the story, we have to narrow down on specific scenes or beats. You've got the story outlined. Now you got to go into the beats and you have to write each beat. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so what I'm doing here is I'm just outlining some potential beats for you, right? Radix becoming intrigued with school or magic tricks that Everett performs. That's a beat. You can sit down tonight and spend an hour and just write a scene where Radix watch Everett perform tricks. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
How does that feel?
It sounds interesting because this, I just added this to my notes about this part here because I was trying to show, the thief that actually stole parts of the wall was
Mm-hmm.
his friend that he doesn't necessarily keep up with all the time, but they still talk sporadically. And with the discovery that the impellers are actually part of the what looked like a sand torpedo,
Yeah.
that's where Everett got the idea that he could be potentially use it to, you know, get revenge back on the city that caused the Oasis Consortium to split. I just added, I was trying to make it all fit together on that part.
It fits together beautifully. And the reason I started down here,
Mm-hmm.
I started down here on purpose, even though your story starts up here with Radix, is because this is your world before, right?
Okay.
So if I'm going to mark this is, and I don't, the thing about the first time you write a book, Matt, is you're going to write a whole bunch of scenes that may not make it into your ending book. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm marking this as the reason I wanted you to start here is because this is on your timeline. This is the stuff that happens first.
Gotcha.
And then when we get to Redix, you're now jumping into Redix being um an adult and working an adult. So you've got another scene here we can write where I'm just picking random colors. Whereas like once upon a time, there's a guy named Redix who worked in an R&D department in the planetary government agency responsible for research and innovation security. I need a scene that shows me this. Show me him at work,
Okay.
right? Show me him wandering around. Show me him at the wall that breathes. Now, I don't need a scene where it's like 5 paragraphs of a summary about the wall that breathes. That's world building. That's what you have up here. I want you to start thinking of these beats and these scenes as Redix is having a conversation with somebody at this place, or Redix is having a conversation with somebody while this happens.
Right.
So Redix is going to have a conversation with somebody while they're at work. And we're going to see him at work through that conversation. They can be
Okay.
talking about going to lunch. They can be talking about how the day sucks. They can be saying good morning, coming to work. They can be going home, right? Like clocking out. But whatever we need to get from the large outline down into the small scenes, the small scenes are conversations between your characters.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I want you to write a conversation between Radix and somebody at work while they're at work so that we can kind of see Radix at work, because your world building is beautiful. And it's like, Matt, I read through it multiple times. There's not anywhere where I can be like, this is going to be a problem for you, or this is going to be dangerous, or like you've got problems. It's good. It's good enough, right? Like it's fine. It works. You know, a beautiful novel can come out of this. A beautiful series can come out of this. And you need to trust yourself that you know it. You need to trust that you've done the work. You know the world building. Now it's time to write the scenes. How does that feel?
It sounds exciting.
Okay. So our scenes are going to be these small conversations next to each other. Um, one at a time, right? That you can go through what you've already written. You don't need to write new things. And you just need to find these little moments in here and say, like, okay, what kind of conversation, what kind of moment between Redix and other characters can I have where this gets talked about? So every day, Redix works with others in the research department to try to improve the divine and the efficiency of the impaler system that creates the breathing wall and performs maintenance on the payloads that need replacing. So you've got two scenes here potentially. Radix performing work on these things. Radix working with his team to try to design, and then the team doing maintenance on them. That's two really, interesting scenes between Radix and his team. And those two scenes are going to tell, like, watching them talk to each other about how they improve the efficiency is going to explain to me the breathing wall.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I had envisioned, it opening with like one of the dust storms starting to come in for some kind of new trainee that just got put into the department, and he's never seen the wall before or even know how it works. And then as it hits and the wall starts making its sounds as it does its job, Radix was explaining to the trainee, yeah, it's supposed to do that. It's okay.
Perfect. That's this right here. They're at work together. He's shown that that's a great scene. And so the step you need to start taking now is writing those scenes.
Okay.
Okay. I would use this document you've written as inspiration and as a guide, but not as a Bible,
Okay.
meaning it's going to change.
Right.
And you're going to write a scene with that trainee thinking that's the only scene that trainee is in. And then you're going to find, like, you know what? I actually really like that trainee. And then you're going to go to bed. And that night you're going to think about, like, man, I got a scene in my head where that trainee is like getting water out of the water cooler and hears something he shouldn't hear.
Ah,
Let yourself run with that kind of thing.
okay.
Because again, you're going to write a whole bunch of scenes that may not fit in the end product. You're going to write a whole bunch of things that you may have to expand upon later, right? Like part of this is your first novel is really discovering how to write scenes. And so if you're passionate about a moment, write the moment. And you can come back once you've got all of this plot broken out into scenes. You can come back and go, okay, I don't really like this scene with Radix as a kid. Or you can come back and go, like, I really love the starting with the trainee as my first scene of the book. Maybe this is a flashback and we can move it around. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. How do you feel about getting started writing by starting that way?
Excited.
Good. There's a trick I use to get started with a blank page, because once you've got your kind of scene set up, you use spreadsheets at work?
Yes.
Okay. How do you feel about them?
I love spreadsheets.
Nice. I figured. I can kind of tell.
I'm a data person.
Nice. I can kind of tell by how you're talking that you and I are kindred spirits in a spreadsheet. Um, Sheets or Excel?
Either or.
Okay. So this is just a stupid sheet, Google Sheet.
There's no such thing as a stupid sheet.
Okay, fair. Well, I haven't written anything in it, so right now it's just a blank sheet. So this is what I do when I'm doing what you could call exploratory or discovery writing, which is kind of what I'm coaching you to do, right? Start tracking the scenes you write. So get your outline out, give yourself your scene beat. I'm writing this scene here. And a lot of times, like, are you going to write in the mornings or in the evenings or in the afternoons? When in the day is a good time for you to sit down and write?
Probably during lunch.
Okay. So before you go to work, take 5 minutes and figure out what plot beat you're writing, right? And just, grab one. One day, something out of the ordinary happened during a period of dust devils of the wall. Some of the impalers became unstable and eventually broke off the stack. Maybe you're like, okay, this is the scene I'm writing today, right? Just decide that before you go to work. It's going to kind of live in your head
Mm-hmm.
during the day, so that when you sit down to write, you've given yourself an advantage. You've lined up your plot beat. You kind of know where you're going. Again, make sure you're thinking about it as a conversation. So this is great. This is a great scene beat. You need Redix. What the way you want to rephrase it is, Redix and X person discover this and have to deal with it, because this a scene is characters interacting.
Okay.
So you got to get two characters or more in there. Redix and the team discover this and interacting. Then when you sit down, because you're limited in your time to write, you're writing during your lunch break. When you sit down, you open up the page. Don't be critical. Just start writing what comes out, right? Because you've got in your head, Redix and the team are doing this, right? You might start in the middle of the scene. The opening of the scene might be like, oh shit, Redix yelled, as one of the bars started to push against the wall in a way he knew it wasn't supposed to, right? That might be the opening of this scene. The opening of the scene might be like, Redix opened up his lunch and took out his sandwich and looked across the table from, Susan S. What do you got to eat today? And then they start hearing something, but like, let yourself start wherever you naturally start.
Okay.
And then just write the scene and see how far you get. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It might take multiple lunch breaks to get a single scene done. But we got to start getting this to come out of you at a scene level. When you get home, or if you have a moment before lunch is over, go ahead and write like one sentence description. I'd probably give yourself a date too. Later, this is going to serve as a guide for your editing.
Okay.
But I'd get like, date written. I'd get like one sentence description of the scene, just to remind yourself what you wrote that day. And then you might write like, notes, because you're going to have things that are like, I wrote this scene, I did this thing, but now as I was writing, I realized like I need more wall, right? Like, or I need it not exciting enough. Go ahead and put that note in there for yourself, just so you know when you're coming back to it to edit and actually put this book together, you've got this list of what's happening and what's going on. Does
Okay.
that make am I making sense?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Great.
Okay. Is that all doable?
Absolutely.
What are your concerns about it?
I guess I always thought I was a plotter. Apparently I'm not, because this is more discovery based, which I'm fine with, because I'm new to all this writing. So I just assumed.
No, you are a plotter. This is what plotters do
Oh, okay.
when we're first writing. So here is a is that a good one to show you? Here we go. Here's the first one of these I ever did. This was from like 2014. So I was doing just what I told you. Now I had this all plotted out. I had everything mapped out exactly how I wanted it. Um, and I remember I wrote this scene. I think it was this scene right here, the staff meet, and things just as I was writing, even though I'm a plotter and I had like all my plots and my sheets and everything laid out, as I was writing, it just went sideways on me.
Gotcha.
Um, and this was you can see I was writing like a one short sentence. I was writing some notes to myself, and then I came back and had some reflections, but I only got one reflection in. Um, so, but that's kind of how your first book rolls out. In the future, my bet is how you're gonna write, and you probably, Matt, won't even finish this whole plot. My bet is you're gonna get 10 scenes, 5 to 10 scenes in. And then you're going to take a step back and you're going to be like, I need to know where I'm going. That's when we can apply some plot structure to you.
Okay.
And that's when we can make a sheet. Let me see. Sorry, I didn't know I actually didn't expect us to go this direction with you, but so I didn't pull these up earlier. I probably should have. But give me 1 second, I'll pull up another one that's more formed out. Um, but that's where oh, here's the most recent tracking sheet. Is this a good one? Wait a second. What's happening? Oh, there we go. Yeah. This is a more mature plot sheet, right? You can see that I'm tracking. I have formulas down here at the bottom that track all this for me, like my totals. You can see that I'm editing chapters. Putting a one there allows me to like gauge the percentages of how much I have written and how much I don't have written. I've got my chapters number, I've got my chapter name, I've got my themes. It's a braided narrative, so I have whole ton of themes. I've got my emotional tracking of like, is it a positive or negative bent? I've got my time notes as to like where it works. I have a feeling you're going to be this kind of writer. You just got to build up to it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you'll probably I'm going to send you I'm not. After you've written 5 scenes, I want you to reach back out to me over email.
Okay.
And after you've written 5 scenes, I'll send you a plot sheet you can start thinking about.
Okay. That sounds great.
But we got to get you writing first.
Yes.
Um, okay, so summary where we're at. You've got great plot beats already. You've got characters and a massive world in your head that needs to come out on the page. And you've got a really, really solid start. I don't want you to get caught up in writing to a system yet. I want you to get used to writing scenes. And so grab one of these plot beats, whichever one rings out to you the most, clearest in your head, and read it before you go to work. And remember the formula. This thing happens when Radix and another character talk about it or see it.
Okay.
Everything needs to be rephrased as Radix and another character blank. Do that in the morning before you go to work. When you sit down for lunch, open up a white page and just let yourself go. Knowing that what you're training yourself to do is think in scenes. So, like a movie, you're thinking yourself, you're taking this big Bible you have, and you're learning to think about it in scenes of a movie. And so you're just going to write that scene and let it go where it goes. Let the characters kind of wander, knowing that you're going to have to edit them back into a plot, that this isn't your finished book, but that what you're doing right now is training yourself to write these scenes. And then either at the end of your writing period or at night when you get home before you go to bed, log what you wrote
Okay.
and log it out and be like, this is what I wrote today. After you get 5 or 10 in, we can start talking about building a plot line for you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we've got a plan. You feel good about the plan?
Absolutely.
Okay. What else can I help you with before I send you out to write?
I think that was it because I had, like I said, had all this in my head, probably got about half of it down, and I just needed a plan to start getting into it.
And this is what makes you a plotter when we talk about those two side extremes of the side. First, I've never met a writer that's all one or all another. Right? But what makes you a plotter is that you needed to go big to small. You needed to get the whole world out on paper. You needed to get all the characters down. You needed a plan before you could start writing scenes. Usually pantsers, the other end of that, like plotter, pantser spectrum, pantsers need a moment in their head, not a whole world. A whole world like you've written suffocates them. So they need a moment, and then they need to write that moment and go from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So as you learn to write scenes and as you get into the habit of writing every day, which is why I'm telling you 5 to 10, because 10 gives you 2 solid weeks of writing every workday. As you get into that, like writing every day, we're going to learn what you love about this work and what you want to pivot about this work. You might, like me, I found when I was doing this, my real joy comes in the scene. I didn't know that when I started. When I started, I thought my joy was coming in the planning. But when I sat down to write my version of Radix talking to somebody, I was like, oh, this is exciting me. This is fun. Um, Not everybody's that way. You might find that your real joy comes in the planning. And if that's the case, we can hook you up with a co-writer, right? Where you're doing all the planning and somebody like me who loves writing the scenes is writing the scene, and then you're reading and editing and they're writing, and it's this conversation between the two of you. We can hook you up with AI and get you started writing with AI so that you're working more as a project manager for like a team of AI writers. There's a lot of different ways to go. So part of this is exploring. You've done the planning and you like it and you've got it all in your head. Let's get you writing scenes to see where your energy really comes from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think you're gonna reading your plan, man, and the way you've written this out like beats in a movie, I think you're really gonna like writing scenes. I think it's gonna be irritating because they're never gonna be good enough for you. But I think the act of sitting down and writing one is going to give you a lot of energy. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And
That
that's what
sounds
we
good.
need. We need to build energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. I'm gonna stop the share. Is anything else you want to talk about before
No,
I turn off the recording and we chat a little bit more?
that was it.
Okay.
That
Perfect.
was a big help.
Good.